Hi guys, it's Miss Griffin taking you through Unit 2, Skill 7, Proving Parallel Lines. I've got your essential question here, so if you want to just pause the video in about 30 seconds, then you can write it down with the video paused. The question says, when asked to prove lines parallel, what is the process and which angle pair are most commonly used? Again, pause the video at this point so that you can jot it down, and then we'll talk about example 1. So you guys have been doing a lot of explaining questions recently in this unit. They've been embedded throughout each of the skills, but we definitely focused on it Unit 2, Skill 6, last skill. And so now we're going to focus on it with lines that are parallel. Sometimes it'll come in the form of a multiple choice question, while other times it comes in the form of a short response or free response question where you have to explain every step. That's your process here. Explain every single step that you're taking with every move that you make. Okay, so example 1 says Joe drew line segments A, B, C, D, meaning this first top line segment, E, F, G, B, F, and C, F as shown in the diagram below. Scaling triangle BFC is formed. Which statement will allow Joe to prove angle ABCD is parallel to angle EFG? Now remember when we talked way back in skill, I think 4, about parallel lines, we were constantly trying to find a Z, because in a Z we have alternate interior angles, which are congruent, as you remember. So when we look at this diagram, I'm going to label or highlight the Z's that I'm seeing and look to see if it's in one of the choices. So I just made a Z. It's a little awkward looking, but if I look at this, I have angle ABF and angle GFB. I see angle ABF in choice A, but BFC is not anything that I just highlighted or outlined. So A is gone. Angle CFG, FCB, those letters don't match. So what you need to do is continue going through this process, highlighting the Z's, erasing them, going through and looking at your multiple choice options to see which is your choice. So at this point, I want you to actually pause the video and try to answer this question on your own. We've narrowed it down to 3 choices. Now you're going to look at the diagram and answer it yourself. Once you've answered it, hit play, and then I'll explain the correct answer for you. So here in this correct answer, we should have choice B, because when I highlight this Z here, we have angle CFG right here and angle FCB right here. Again, choice B. In example 2, it says in the diagram below of quadrilateral ABCD with diagonals BD, the measure of angle A is 93, so on and so forth. That gives us all of those measures and those expressions. They are already labeled in the picture. Of course, you would be reading this through yourself if it were a problem on an assessment or a practice. It says determine if AB is parallel to DC. So I'm just going to highlight AB and DC because that's what we want to get parallel. But then I notice very clearly that I have a Z going on here. So in order to get parallel lines, remember that we need to find angle pairs that are either congruent or supplementary, like alternate interior angles that are congruent, or corresponding angles that are congruent, same side interior angles that are supplementary, etc. So if I find this Z and I can get these alternate interior angles congruent, then my lines are parallel. So we're going to work to first find this angle up here, which I'm going to choose to call Y. Then we'll work to figure out what X is and plug it back in for angle CDB, this angle here with the X plus 19. If Y and X plus 19 are equal, then these lines are parallel. All right, so let's work it to get Y. Find Y. Hopefully you're recognizing that Y is within a triangle, and in that triangle, angles should add to 180. So we've got 43 plus 93 plus Y equals 180. Go ahead and pause the video. When you come back to hit play, we'll have our answer for Y. You should also. Okay, so I found that Y is equal to 44. Next, we're going to take a look at finding X. Step 2, find X. So similar process here because x is also contained within a triangle. So 3 angles again in a triangle sum to 180, except this time we just have a bunch of x's instead of just numbers. X plus 19 plus 2x plus 6 plus 3x plus 5 equals 180. So you're going to pause the video, you're going to solve this for x, and hit play when you're ready. Okay, so I found x to be 25. Then we need to figure out, again, what x plus 19 is. So we're just going to plug it in. X plus 19 equals 25 plus 19. 25 plus 19 is 44. Oh my goodness. We found 44 here, 44 here. So what does it tell us about AB and DC? Well, it tells us if they're parallel or not. Because they're congruent, they certainly are. So last but not least, I'm putting it up top, I'm sorry. Wherever you have space, put it. We have to state that AB is parallel to DC and explain our reasoning. So AB is parallel to DC because, think about what kind of angles are formed out of the Z. Because alternate interior angles are congruent. That here gets you full credit for this problem. If you had stopped and not done this final step up top, you would have probably only gotten either 2 or 3 points out of 4 on this problem. So you don't want to miss that last and final step because it did say to determine if they are parallel and then explain your reasoning. If you flip it over, we'll see another example here with explaining or proving lines that are parallel. So this one came straight from a Common Core exam. It says in the diagram below, EF intersects AB and CD at G and H respectively, and GI is drawn such that GH is congruent to IH. If the measure of angle EGB is 50, so let's find that angle and mark it. And DIG is 115. Explain why AB is parallel to CD. So again, we're looking for proving or explaining why those two lines are parallel. So again, you just want to make sure you've marked up everything that they gave us so that we can figure out why those lines are parallel. Hopefully you're not sitting here thinking, oh yeah, I've marked everything up, because there's a really important statement up here at the top. It says GH is congruent to IH. Now I purposely didn't mark that up initially because I wanted to see if you guys would catch it. A lot of students, when they took this problem or did the exam with this problem, they missed that part, and it's a huge aspect to this problem. If you miss marking up every single part of the given, then you're going to miss part of this problem and you're not going to be able to solve it properly. So knowing that we know that GH is congruent to IH, that immediately tells us something about this triangle. 2 congruent sides means that we have 2 congruent angles. So I'm going to mark those angles congruent, and we'll come back to them in just a minute. So when we go through this process of explaining why these lines are parallel, we're going to list our explanation in bullet form. It just makes it a little bit easier. You can certainly do paragraph form if you want to, but mathematicians are lazy, as I've told you before, and so we like bullets. Short, sweet, simple. Okay, so what we're going to do is just work our way through this problem, finding as many angle measures as possible and explaining each one along the way. But remember, again, we want to look for a Z. Z's are the easiest way to do this. There is an alternative way that we could do this that would be one less step, but Z's are just the easiest, so we'll stick with it. And then I'll explain afterwards what the alternative way would have been. So here, I'm going to look and I see, okay, I know that this angle is 50 and it's making a bow tie right now with this angle. So this angle should also be 50 degrees. So I'm going to state that. Measure of angle, we're going to name it with 3 letters, starting with A, coming into G, and out to H. Measure of angle AGH equals 50, because that's how we're going to list all of these bullets here. Measure of an angle equals because blah, blah, blah. So it's equal to 50 degrees because vertical angles are congruent. Cool. Now I'm going to work with the 115. 115 is sitting next to this angle right here where I'm placing all these purple dots. Angle 115 and this angle with purple dots are on a straight line. Angles on a straight line, as you know, sum to 180. So we've got 180 minus 115. Remember to show your work off to the side somewhere. Gives us 65 degrees. So we're going to label that 65 degrees, measure of angle. Label it with 3 letters here again. Start at one of the outsides, come into the angle where the 65 is, and go out to another piece. Something like angle GIH equals 65 degrees because, remember, we did angles on a line equal 180. Okay, from there, remember that we had an isosceles triangle here. The isosceles triangle has 2 congruent angles, so if one of them is 65, then the other one must be 65. Measure of angle. Go ahead and try to name it with 3 letters. Measure of angle, maybe you said IGH, or if you said HGI, that would also be acceptable. Because, all right, we're explaining that isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle has 2 congruent sides and angles. Don't forget to state both of them, sides and angles. Okay, we're moving right along here. We are almost to our Z. You see we've got the Z going, we've got a 50 here, and we're just missing this angle, but guess what? We now have a triangle with 65, 65, and say X. We don't know what that angle is. Well, we can easily figure it out because they're angles in a triangle. Go ahead and pause the video if you need to, but I want you to figure out the measure of X. So I found that that angle right there is 50 degrees. Again, I'm going to name it with 3 letters. I want you to try it first. I went with IHG. You could have also gone with GHI. So it's 50 degrees because angles in a triangle equal 180. Cool, now we got 50 degrees and 50 degrees. That means that that is fabulous and awesome and wonderful and we're done. Except that we're not. Because it says explain why AB is parallel to CD. So we have to have a last and final step saying that AB is parallel to CD because, and then talk about the angle relationship, because alternate interior angles are congruent. So it's kind of like a CEI idea here, claim, evidence, interpretation. We just didn't have a claim at the beginning. This is all of our evidence, and this is our interpretation. Final conclusion. Okay, now I promised you that I'd tell you about the shorter version, one step less. Instead of stating this original statement up here, the first statement that we did, we could have done these 3 pieces here, just the same way we did. And instead of using alternate interior angles, we would have used corresponding angles. And I'm going to highlight those in yellow here. The corresponding angles being 50 degrees up here with angle EGB and 50 degrees right here with angle GHI. We just, again, would have skipped this first step, and then instead of alternate interior angles, we would have talked about corresponding. Okay, so again, there's not always just one way to do things. You can do them in multiple ways most times. But if you've missed anything in this video or something wasn't clear to you, go back, rewind, do what you need to do to help yourself be successful on the practice before you come back and write your summary. Otherwise, that's all I have for you. See ya!